Up, up. Up, up. Well, we're back. Hold on, things are out of order. There we go, that's the order. Well, we're gonna continue with Hana. So, let's go. Depending how outside is, and depending on Gaia, if it starts thundering, the stream might go off. Just warning people now. Alright. Should I do this part? I should probably do this part. April 1867. You know what? No, we're skipping, because nothing is literally going to change in this goddamn scene. It is going to be the same. We've seen it too many times. We're just going to go through it. And we're gonna skip through this. Something is flying in my room as my voice cracks. Anyway, Kyoto was suspected as the one that was at the board that helped the Tosamen get away because they look so much like us, and Okita is dying. Coughing up a lung. Oh, so getting lectured by him, which isn't normal. And now we're back at headquarters. Unable to sleep. Something fucking rushed into our room, breaking down the door. It's a random guy, but they're a fury! Which isn't good. They want blood. Specifically ours. Because they found us first. And they succeed in cutting us. Which isn't the best thing ever. We call for help, though. Because of Okita. This has changed nothing whatsoever. Yep. It's still Hichikata that comes saves us first. The Pocketeer here. Nothing has still changed here. And Ito is here who has found out secrets that he really shouldn't have, and is now going to proceed to use it as blackmail. That's basically the gist of it, anyway. We're going to try to get to the good part, but there's a lot we have to skip. I'm skipping this as well. So Ito's gonna leave with men who are willing to follow him to keep the secret of the water of life and the fury is the secret. But of course we're not allowed to interact with the guardians of the Imperial Tomb, because that would be bad. However, even with all of my confusion, I was especially worried about the soldiers. What about the feelings of those who are being left behind? I wanted to know how the people in the Shinsengumi felt about Ito-san and his followers leaving. And then go into a yawn. I decided to ask someone close to the people who were leaving. Perhaps it would be best for me to talk to someone who was close to Heisuke and Sato-san. I'd only known them since I'd come to Kyoto, and their departure was making me miserable. The rest of the Shinsengumi had known them for much longer. How were those closest to them feeling? As I was trying to think of who to talk to first, Nagakura and Harada walked out of the common room.
Oh, 昨日は大変だったな。
もう動いても平気なのか?
I'm alright.
怪我の様子はどうなんだ? 結構深い傷だっただろう。
Well, it wasn't as deep as it originally seemed. I'm sure it'll heal soon.
そっか。そりゃよかった。女の肌に傷が残っちまったとなりゃ、詫びようがねえからな。
The genuine concern on their faces warmed my heart. They were good men. All of the captains were good men, which only made it that much more heartbreaking that some of them were leaving us.
しかしほんと、昨べはひでえ夜だったな。伊藤さんにゃ、とうとう羅刹のことを知られちまうし。
About Ito-san. How do you guys feel about Heisuke and Sato-san? About them leaving, I mean.
ああ、そのことか。平助のやつがあそこまで白状者だとは思わなかったな。あいつ、俺たちに一言もなかったんだぜ。ぶっ殺すぞ、ったくよ。
まあ、あいつもあいつで悩んでたんだろう。
Harada's right, he's not. We've seen his reasoning and it's sound for him, I suppose.
悩んだ挙句に出した結論があれかよ。今まであんだけ面倒見てやったのに。
ただこねたってしょうがねえだろうが。同僚の小さいやつだな。
Oh lord, what is going on? Hold up. I will respond to that later. It's important, but not at the moment because this is stream time. Okay.
ところでよ、近頃の近藤さんのことどう思う?
Kondo-san? What do you mean? Kondo-san didn't seem any different to me than he had the first day I'd met him.
最近の近藤さん、ちょっと気取ってねえか? 幕府のお偉いさんとちょくちょく会うようになったせいかわからねえけどよ。伊藤派のことだって、あの人が伊藤さんって甘やかしたから付き上がったと思うんだよな。
Do you disagree with the chief and the commander?
いや、そうじゃねえんだけどよ。まあ、あの嫌味な伊藤が出ていくのはせいせいしてるんだぜ。
しかし、いずれ敵対することにはなるだろうな、伊藤さんのとことは。
Harada's words struck me like an unpleasant... Wait, Harada's words struck me as unpleasant president, although I didn't know why. Crossing swords, but why?
伊藤さんたちが今後どこの後ろ盾を得て動くつもりなのかはわからねえが、尊攘派とつながりを持ちてんなら元新選組なんて肩書きは邪魔にしかならねえからな。
What will you do if we have to fight them?
決まってんだろ。敵に回るようなら切る。
それが新選組だ。
って言うだろうな、土方さんならよ。
Nokura scratched his head out of frustration.
けどな、いざあいつらと戦うことになったらどうなるんだろうな。
不定老子を切るのとは話が違うしな。本気でやり合えるかどうかはわからねえ。
Their voices have faded to little more than a murmur. I couldn't ask anymore. My wound healed completely soon afterwards, but I kept the bandages on. I didn't want anyone to see that my scar had healed. Susito-san, Heisuke, and Saito-san all left. The compounds felt so much larger and emptier. Around the same time, Takeda, one of the captains of the Shinsengumi, had also left. I guess these are things we can't help, but... I felt as if everyone was going in different directions, off to forge their own paths. I couldn't help but feel sad about it. We're skipping this. We're skipping this whole thing. This one is too long and I don't see benefit to it. We know what's going on. We know that here Sen and Kimigiku have come to get us because they believe that we would be safer in their village because ultimately we are a female demon. And being with demons of our own kind, we might be safer there, but because she really doesn't believe that the Shinsengumi are capable of protecting us all the way. But the Shinsengumi are fucking stubborn as hell, is the other problem. And they kind of, sort of, promise to protect us, so there's that. They also confirmed that Kazuma, Amagiri, and Shiranui are also demons as well. But ultimately, it's gonna come down to Kono-san letting us actually choose in private with Sen. So, that's what's going on in this scene. And Sana-san is still looking for a fight, and I'm never gonna not say that. Can't believe I summarized that real quick and the scene isn't even over. Here it is. Kondo-san! Thank you for being a gentleman. And now we're alone with Sen when we get to make our choice, which really isn't a choice, so we just have to answer one very specific question that she has. This one is the question we're answering. What? Her question had been entirely innocent, although it had caught me off guard. I couldn't possibly lie to her. What should I do? The answer that we're looking for is yes. I nodded and did my best to look confident. She seemed a little surprised, but She eventually looked relieved and softened up.
そっか。それが誰なのかまでは聞かないけど。
She says she won't ask, but she really deep down wants to ask. I know Sen. She wants to be a nosy bitch, but she can't.
あなたが一人の女の子として見つけたものがここにはあるのね。それなら離れろなんて言えるはずないか。
Thank you for waiting.
どうだった？結論は出たかな？
Before I could speak, Sen stepped forward.
はい。彼女のことをこれまで通りよろしくお願いします。
Sen,
姫様、よろしいのですか？本当に。
ええ、もう決めたことだから。今は彼女の意思を優先しましょう。
分かった。そういうことなら今後も我々新選組が責任を持って彼女の身を預からせてもらおうじゃないか。
まあ大船に乗ったつもりで任せとけって。
新八の船は泥船だけどな。しかしまあよかったな。
ここに残るなんて君も物好きだね。肝が据わってるのか単に鈍感なだけなのか。
fuck you, Okita.
言っておくが客人扱いする気はねえからな。お前の待遇は今までと同じだ。
Thank you, all of you, for letting me stay. Sen took my hands in hers and let her eyes rest on mine.
くれぐれも気をつけてね。私はいつでもあなたの味方だから。
Thank you, Sen. She gave me one last warm smile, and then Sen and Kimigiku were gone. Once again, sleep refused to come. My mind worked furiously, turning over everything Sen had told me, examining it from every angle. I was a demon. Not only that, but I was the head of a pure-blooded demon clan that was nearly destroyed, my heritage being the reason for Kazuma's continued interest. Gosh. I had decided to stay with the Shinsengumi, but was that really the best idea? Should I have left instead? I wanted to stay, of course, and I didn't really think leaving was a reasonable choice, but what if I made a mistake? I heard a sound from outside and it made me jump. That sound, could it be? I heard Shimada from the hallway. The door snapped open as Shimada stepped in. His eyes started back and forth nervously and his body was tense. Has something happened?
はい。鬼たちが屯所に襲撃をかけてきました。
What?
奴らの狙いは君です。この部屋でじっとしていてください。
But I was the reason they'd come here. How could I justify sitting on my hands while others fought my battles for me? I didn't know what to do. Well, we're gonna go find the others. I have to go, Shimada.
いけません。絶対に君をここから出すなと副長が仰せです。
Those demons are here for me. If anyone gets hurt, maybe they'll listen to me. That's why they're here, right? What if I can convince them? What if I can convince them to leave peacefully? Please, I'm begging you, let me go. We know that they're here for me. So if I could convince them, maybe Kazuma and the others would hear me out. Shimada's brow furrowed and his mouth drew into a tight line, but at last he sighed, shaking his head.
そこまで言うのであれば仕方ありませんね。ただし、俺は君の護衛を申し付けられています。ここを出るというのであれば、俺も共に行きますが、構いませんね。
That will be fine. We ran out of the house, and then I paused momentarily, unsure of where to go.
雪村君、こっちです。
The second he said that, something passed right in front of my eyes. His big body flew. He flew several yards through the air, then hit the ground hard, sliding another few feet before lying still. Shimada! It all happened so quickly. I tried to run up to him, but then...
どこへ行くつもりだ?
That voice... In the same instant that I recognized his voice, I felt his arms snake around my neck to pull me in. I struggled, but his grip was as immovable as steel. Oh, that's it!
今日、野生一族の者がここを訪れたそうだが、かの者たちから様々なことを聞かされただろう。誇り高き純血の鬼であるお前は、このようなまがい者どもの住みはそうだ。俺と共に来い。
It was obvious what he was referring to when he mentioned fakes.
作られたまがい者の鬼たちの哀れな姿はお前も目にしたはずだ。名をなすためあのようなものを生み出す連中に手を貸すことが正しきことだと本気で思っている
のだ。I couldn't find a response. For obvious reasons, I wasn't necessarily in favor of the existence of Furies, but there are times when you have no other choice. Still, as an outsider, I'm in no position to say. And more than anything else, my father was the one responsible for this serum. You don't even know anything. You don't even know anything about the Shinsengumi situation.
事情を知ったからといって目をつぶれという。
Well, just then.
新選組屯所に討ち入るとは大した度胸だな。おせんとかいう女といいてめえといい、ここは鬼とやらの集会所じゃねえんだぜ。これ以上好き勝手はさせねえ。覚悟はいいか。
てめえ、嫁取りのためにわざわざ俺たちの元に押しかけてきてやがるんだってな。こんだけ肘手食わさりりゃそろそろ思い知ってもいい頃だと思うが、鬼っつうのはよっぽど諦めが悪いみてえだな。
Hijikata-san, Harada! Behind them, I could see Yamazaki and several of the other Shinsengumi soldiers. Some men were missing, though. Had they been injured by the demons? Perhaps even killed?
貴様らにはこの者の値打ちなどわかるまい。鬼は鬼のもとにあるのが定め。ふさわしい者の手にあってこそ真価を発揮するというものだ。
はっ、真正面から口説いて振られんのが怖えからって無理やり連れ去ろうっつうのか。かっこ悪いにも程があるぜ、てめえのやり方はよ。
言っとくが、そいつは人質にはならねえぞ。そいつを盾に取ったところで、俺たちは何のためらいもなくてめえを切る。
元よりそんなつもりはない。貴様らごときに人質など必要ないからな。
The ring of men around him began to draw in. I could feel the tension build, like a rope being pulled taut. Soon it would reach its breaking point. What was I going to do? Well, we're going to trust the Shinsengumi is what we're going to do. I had decided long ago that I would trust them. The men of the Shinsengumi had far more experience and skill than I did. The safest thing for me to do would be to leave the situation to them. My eyes met Harada's. They were calm, confident, and warm. Even quite literally in the grip of the enemy as I was, his gaze made me feel safe somehow. I would be fine.
門の周りにいた連中はあらかた片付きました。
たく、あっけねえにも程があるよな。所詮は人間かよ。おい風間よ、目的の女は捕まえたんだ。さっさと帰ろうぜ。
確かにこれ以上騒ぎが大きくなってしまっては何かと面倒です。
そうだな。
しかしがっかりさせてくれるぜ。新選組っつってもこの程度だ。
His laughter was cut short by Harada's spear.
おっと!
Shiranui barely dodged the spear. However, the attack didn't end there. Harada attacked twice, 3 more times, trying to spear Shiranui.
新選組がどうしたって、もう一遍聞かせてもらおうじゃねえか。
お？てめえかよ。原田！
その場から絶対に動くんじゃねえぞ。
As he spoke, his spear shot forward, slipping through the air.
愚か。その程度でこの俺を倒せるとでも思っているのか。
どこを見てやがる。てめえの相手はこの俺だ。
Out of nowhere, Hijikata-san appeared, his sword already sweeping down towards Kazuma. Kazuma had dodged the strike and intercepted it with his blade. I slumped to the ground as the Shinsengumi's combined attack forced Kazuma back.
そのままじっとしてろ。何があっても顔を上げるなよ。
His spear had nearly grazed the top of my head. Bursts of frenetic swordplay filled my senses. Clearly, this was no ordinary fighter. It was clear that this was a battle between 2 insanely powerful men.
貴様ら。
He brushed aside a second blow from Hijikata-san and a strike from Harada.
鬼っつっても切られりゃ血が出る。首をはねられりゃ死ぬんだろ。
試してみるか。
ああ、この手でてめえを地獄に送ってやるよ。
The sound of steel and steel rang out across the compound. I was surprised that none of the blades were breaking.
人間とは不可解な生き物です。なぜ叶わぬと分かっていて牙を剥くのですか。
As she spoke, Amagiri moved towards Kazuma, but found Nagakura standing in his path.
おっと、お前の相手はこの俺だ。
ご遠慮したいところですが、その様子では聞き入れてはもらえないでしょうな。
当たり前だろ。
Nagakura swung his sword as if backed by his entire body, and Amagiri deflected it with his arm.
てめえが池田屋で平助をやったやつだな。あいつの分の一撃もくれてやらなきゃ気が済まねえ。
どうした？さっきまでと比べると動きが鈍ってるぜ。
貴様ごとき全力を出すまでもないから手加減しているだけだ。
原田、てめえは俺がやってやるぜ。
The tip of his gun drifted and weaved, trying to get a good shot at Harada.
吹っ飛びやがれ。
させるか。
と。
Shiranui lost his balance greatly due to the spear being shot at him.
残念だが、この間合いだと銃はやりにゃ勝てねえぜ。
面白い。 原田、てめえよっぽど蜂の巣にされてえらしいな。
どうするのです風間。敵も体勢を立て直しつつありますが。
今日の遊びはしまいだ。この娘はいつでも手に入れられるか
Kazuma put his sword away.
逃がすか。
Ishikata-san tried to have another swing at the demons, but Kazuma and Amagiri disappeared into the night.
何が鬼だよ。あいつらの方こそ口だけじゃねえか。
His arms hung at his sides and the tip of his sword nearly touched the ground.
無理すんな新八。息が上がってるぜ。
バカ野郎、こんなの敵を油断させるための作戦に決まってんだろうが。んなことより。
Nagakura glared and where he looked, there was one demon left. Shiranui. This bitch is still here smiling.
原田、お前ほんと面白えな。やりごときでこの俺様に向かってくるなんてよ。
Shiranui gave an eerie smirk and Harada's lips curled up.
お前をやるのはまた今度だ。次こそは邪魔が入らねえことを祈りてえもんだな。どっちかが死ぬまで殺し合いてえ。
And with that, he was gone. The demons disappeared and finally the compounds fell silent. Was it over? I felt my body go limp as the tension disappeared.
大丈夫か。よく頑張ったな。
I looked up to find Harada's smiling face in front of my own. Harada! I stopped. If I said anything more, I was afraid I'd burst into tears, so instead I gave him a shaky smile. With a grin, he tousled my hair, and his touch pushed me over the edge. Oh, Harada, thank you. Thank you so much.
悪かったな。すぐに助けてやれなくてよ。怖かっただろ。
No.
無理すんな。切り合いの中に居合わせて怖くねえはずねえだろうが。だがよ、ありがとな。あいつらを追っ払えたのはお前のおかげだ。
What?
なんだかんだで男っつのは単純なもんでな。女の目が近くにあるとみっともねえ姿は絶対に見せられねえって思っちまうもんなんだ。
Harada. I think he was saying these kinds of words so that I didn't feel guilty, but his subtle kindness seeped into my heart.
何が正しくて何が間違ってるのかごちゃごちゃして分かりにくい時代ではあるけどよ。それでも男が女を守るっつうのは間違いなく正しいことのはずだ。
His words reminded me of Hisuke and Saito-san's sentiments as they left the Shinsengumi. I wonder if their departure had cast some kind of confusion in his heart. A departure for a man who typically never second-guessed himself. But of course, he's strong, and he would never ever show that side of himself.
お前がいてくれたから俺たちは普段の何倍もの力を出せた。俺だけじゃねえぜ。新八も近藤さんや土方さんもお前を守るために必死で戦ったんだ。だから気にすんじゃねえ。詫びたりもするな。な。 ありがとうな。
With a grin, he tousled my hair, and his touch pushed me over the edge. Thank you, Harada. After a while, I calmed down. Harada extended his hand to me, and I got up.
よし、そんじゃあお前は部屋に戻れよ。送って行ってやるから。
But...
いいからこれぐらいさせろ。な。
Thank you. He walked me to my room, and I took a rest. And now to the aftermath, which we can skip because nothing has changed. And poor Shimada. But we're being kicked out of the temple. They want us out because we fought on temple grounds. However, they are willing to pay for a plot of land and a new headquarters, so they really want us out. But now we're going to go to Fudodo Village. 1867, August. Hooray, water. August 1867. The Shinsengumi were kicked out of the Nishihon Wanje Temple, and 2 months had passed since we moved our headquarters to Fudodo Village. It didn't take long for us to begin familiarizing ourselves with the new environment. Harada had been kind enough to allow me to watch some of the warriors train.
そんじゃ次は相掛かり稽古だ。相手を殺すつもりで全力でやれよ。
His voice echoed through the dojo. All of the men were holding habiki. It gave their training an added intensity, which is far more than they would have been with a bamboo or wooden sword. Far more than there would have been with a bamboo or wooden sword.
なんだ？返し技のコツがわからねえって？そりゃ相手の刀だけ見てるからだよ。どんなやつでも打ち込んでくる直前には必ず前触れがあるもんだ。刀じゃなくて相手の体全体を見るっつうのかな。
He had an answer and advice for every man who came to him with a question. More importantly, though, his answers seemed to help. The men with him were visibly improving.
よし、そんじゃ今日の稽古はここまでだ。後片付けは頼んだぜ。
They set to work putting away their equipment as Harada made his way over toward me, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. Good job. Here's your towel.
おう、ありがとうよ。
He took the towel from me with a smile and started mopping sweat off his face and neck. You're a really good teacher.
そうか。あいつらもそう思ってくれてりゃいいんだが。
Okay, now I understand why they made Harada the PE teacher in the spin-off that takes place in modern day high school. I understand now. Please explain to me Nagakura as the math teacher, though. I don't really know anything about fighting, but it was easy even for me to understand what you were talking about. It feels kind of weird, though.
不思議って何がだよ。
Oh, well, nothing. Never mind.
なんだよ。言いかけてやめられたら気になるじゃねえか。言えよ。
I regret saying anything, but he had me cornered. Well, when we went to Shimabara, you said that you tried to kill yourself. I just don't see how the person I know could have done something like that. He was observant, kind, personable. In every meaningful way, he seemed to be a stable adult. Undoubtedly, he had his reasons, but I couldn't reconcile the man I knew. Wait, undoubtedly, he had his reasons, but I couldn't reconcile the man I knew with someone who would have done that. Harada stopped wiping and looked up at the ceiling.
だからこそだよ。
え？
若い頃、短気を起こしてバカやって、数えきれねえぐらいつまずいて転んだからこそわかるんだ。人ってのはどんな時に失敗すんのか、どんなことをすると取り返しのつかねえことになっちまうのかもな。くだらねえ喧嘩で疎遠になっちまった相手もいるし、しょうもねえことで大事な友達と絶交したこともある。家族とも縁が切れちまったし、帰る場所があるわけでもねえ。だからもう似たような失敗は繰り返したくねえんだ。
He couldn't hide the regret in his voice. I understood, though. Harada was hurt many times by his own mistakes and misjudgments, but he'd learned from them. That was how he'd become the man he was.
これからどうする？せっかくだから外に出てみるか。
What? Really? Can I?
ああ、お前が俺たちの目を盗んで逃げ出したりするはずねえってことはみんなもう分かってるだろうしな。
Yeah, after 3 years. On our way to the gate, we spotted Yamazaki.
お、山崎、どうしたんだ？これからどこかに出かけんのか？
夕飯に使う魚と野菜の一部が傷んでいたので買いに行くところです。
Fish and vegetables, huh?
夏場は食料が腐りやすくて困りますね。
それなら俺がこれからこいつと一緒に買いに行ってやるよ。外出のついでだ。
しかし
He looked around surreptitiously? That's a word I've never seen before. Why, localization team, do you choose weird words? I'm gonna look this up now. I need to... I'm looking this up. I'm looking it up. I'm gonna see how... S-E... No. In a way that attempts to avoid notice or attention secretively. How the fuck do we...
Surreptitiously.
Surreptitiously?
Surreptitiously.
Alright. What other word? What is another word for this? Covert, furtive, secret, stealthily? Just say stealthily! That would have worked so much better. There were so many other words you could have used, but you used this goddamn word. You used a big boy word that I had to physically look up. What the hell? Before fixing Harada with a penetrative stare. I don't remember how to say it anymore.
巡察以外で彼女を外に連れ出してしまってもいいのですか？副長の許可は得ているのでしょうか？
まあいいじゃねえか。細かいことは気にすんなよ。今日の炊事当番はこいつなんだし、ちょうどいいだろう。
Yamazaki had no further arguments with that Harada was willing to listen to, so out we went. The market was bustling with crowds out to get their own dinner ingredients.
山崎のやつは野菜と魚が足りねえって言ってたよな。 そこの株が安そうだし買っていくか。
Hold on. I stopped his hand midway to the turnip and picked through the bin until I found the best, or at least the least bruised specimens. These should be good. Let's get them. Harada laughed.
大した目利きだな。お前いい嫁さんになるぜ、きっと。
Really? It took us another hour or so to gather the rest of the ingredients we needed.
しかしいっぱい買い込んだな。こんだけありゃ食い盛りの大使どもも満足してくれるかな。お前の作る飯はうまいからな。どんなのができるか今から楽しみだぜ。
Then suddenly he stopped. Are you okay? What's wrong?
いや、こんな言い方しちまうとお前のことを飯炊き女扱いしてるみてえだなって思ってよ。本当なら好きな男以外に手料理なんて振る舞いたくねえと思うが、すまねえな。
No, it's okay. I mean, I like eating with other people, apparently. I really like eating with all of you guys. It's fun. I'm happy to put in the work. Back in Edo, I made food all the time, but the only people who ate it were me and my father. Harada relaxed visibly and smiled.
そっか。そう言ってくれると安心するぜ。俺も賑やかな食事は好きだぜ。同じ飯なのに不思議と一人で食うよりうまい気がするよな。
We were still talking when I stopped. Walking towards us was a face I recognized. Heisuke's eyes went wide as he recognized us, and he stopped in his tracks. I opened my mouth to say something to him, but the Shinsengumi was forbidden to fraternize with the guardians of the Imperial Tomb. And that included Heisuke. For a long moment, we looked at one another. What the fuck is going on? And who's doing it? It's... I see. Alright. Anyway. For a long moment, we looked at one another, Heisuke's mouth hanging open as if he were about to speak. But finally, he shut it, set his jaw, and turned sharply to disappear off into the crowd. I had assumed we would cross paths with him eventually. Although Kyoto was a large city, we traveled in similar circles, but what I hadn't considered was how much it would hurt to see him and be forced to turn away. One look at Harada's face told me that he felt the same. He looked smaller. No. Are you okay? When he spoke, I wasn't sure if it was to me or to himself.
どんなもんでもいずれ壊れちまうもんなのかな。何が起こっても、どんな時でも絶対に壊れねえ関係なんて世の中には存在しねえのかな。
There was a deep, resigned sadness to his words that startled me, but what he meant was clear. After what he told me in the dojo, I felt I understood what he meant all too well. He had made many mistakes in his life and driven people he cared for away. But despite all his work, Heisuke, whom he'd loved like a brother, had still left. Given the sort of man he was, though, he refused to show how much that had hurt him. At least, he had, until now. I felt guilty just looking at him, as if I should say something, anything. But I couldn't find the words.
帰るか。
His voice was still full of melancholy darkness. Yeah. Our walk back was nearly silent.
悪かったな。せっかくの外出だってのに暗い気分にさせちまって。そんじゃ俺部屋に戻ってるからよ。大したものを飯の支度頼んだぞ。
He sounded like he always did, but I knew that even if he had managed to hide his grief again, it wasn't done by any stretch. It wasn't gone by any stretch. Harada. I looked straight at him. You can do it. We can find a bond that'll survive anything. His eyes widened. Maybe your path won't be the same as Saito-san's or Heisuke's, but you haven't really changed. You're all doing what you think you have to do. I knew there was an excellent chance I was trying to lecture him on something I knew nothing about. I wasn't one of them, after all. But I had to say something. So, his expression shifted from surprise to realization and then to something else. When he spoke, his voice was filled with emotion.
ありがとうよ。
If my words could ease his pain even a little, then that was all I needed. I watched him walk off, shoulders a little straighter, and let out a relieved sigh. We're on to November now, aren't we? Yep, there it is. Nothing changes in the scene. We're gonna do it anyway. November 1867. A gust of wind stripped some of the last stubborn leaves from the trees and sent them skittering across the Kyoto street. It was cold, and it bit into me through my clothes. I shivered. It's almost winter, isn't it?
ああ、この時期の冷え込みはほんと厳しいなんてもんじゃねえよな。だが、今は昼だからまだマシだぜ。寒い夜の巡察がどれだけ辛いかっつうとな。
He laughed as his breath turned to smoke. Turned like smoke, not to smoke. My fingertips were icy cold, and I blew my breath on them.
なんだ、寒いのか？手でもつないでやろうか？
No, I'm not that cold. I'll be fine. Oh. I noticed someone walking towards us.
よー、二人とも今日もいい天気だな。
こいつだけは寒さとは無縁だよな。
Literally, as we saw last word, holy shit.
あ？やれによってその格好のてめえに言われる筋合いはねえぞ。
Harada has sleeves. You do not under there, sir. The bickering might have looked odd to the passerby, but I knew it for the sign of deep friendship that it was.
なんだよ、そんなにニヤニヤして。
そりゃ、お前がいつも通りの間抜けな面を晒してるからに決まってるだろう。
No, it's just, well, I was just remembering when we met up like this before. Like the time we met Kyoto. I was with Okita and Heisuke then, though. More than 6 months had passed since Saito-san and Heisuke had left to join the Guardians of the Imperial Tomb. Harada and Shinpachi's faces turned grim as I trailed off. I shook my head, hoping vainly to cast off unpleasant thoughts. I just mean there's been so much going on lately. It makes me nostalgic.
まあそうだな。世間もうちもいろいろあったからな。
しかしまさか俺たちが直参に取り立てられる日が来るとは思わなかったけどな。
It was right around the time when we moved our headquarters to Fudoto Village, right? I remember there were a handful of people who said they were going to leave, and it was a big debacle. There was a distinction, though, between those who were able to leave the Shinsengumi and then those who were forced to enter the Fury Corps. Kono-san seemed to be thrilled about becoming promoted to a Jiki-san, but... How do you guys feel about this? About this?
まあ正直柄じゃねえよな。
別に幕府の家来になるために今まで戦ってきたわけでもねえしな。
Kono-san's promotion had changed the Shinsengumi's relationship with the daimyo. Where before we'd only been philosophically aligned with the shogun, now we answered directly to him. For some people, that was a serious problem. Rumors floated around as we began to move to our new headquarters. So, what's this going to change for us going forward? I heard that a few months ago that the Imperial Prince had become the new emperor. I think there was a restoration of imperial rule last month, right? Supposedly the Tokugawa shogunate returned power from the government to the emperor, right?
ああ、坂本龍馬が考えた策らしいな。おかげで戦をやって天下を取りたかった薩摩や長州の奴らから相当恨まれることになったらしいが。
幕府寄りの奴からはもともと嫌われてたから、日本中の浪士から恨まれるようになったってことだな。
とはいえ、これで薩長側も戦をする大義名分がなくなっちまったし、今の調子でこのまま続いていくんじゃねえの？
将軍はそのまんまだし、徳川家が以前日本で一番でかい大名家だってことは変わりがねえしな。薩摩の奴らが何やら怪しげな動きを見せてやがるのが気にかかるが。
ま、幕府側が挑発に乗らなきゃどうってことはねえだろ。
I see. As I looked around the city, it seemed like he had a point. Nothing much seemed to have changed. Inns were still bustling with travelers, tea shops were still smelling delicious. You could still smell the burning incense from the temples scattered throughout the town. Life continued just as it always had, regardless of what the shogun was or wasn't doing. The city might look the same as it always had, but time flowed on regardless, and a great wave was becoming what would carry all of us away. I looked up at Nagakura, and something occurred to me that I hadn't realized of before. Before I realized what I was doing, I'd opened my mouth. I didn't realize you were so smart, Nagakura. You know a lot about politics.
一つ聞いていいか？今まで何だと思ってたんだ、俺のこと。
Let's continue our rounds. It's winter, which means it'll get darker faster.
ごまかしたな。
There was a man named Ryoma Sakamoto. We can skip this whole thing until we get to the part that we actually, because nothing has changed! Anyway, Ryoma's dead, Harada is being blamed, and obviously Harada didn't do it because it was Harada. And, you know, Shinsengumi was like, don't get in the way of Ryoma Sakamoto. But, Saito's back! He's back and to tell us. Yeah, so the Imperials framed Harada and they're now currently trying to assassinate Kondo-san. So now the Shinsengumi has no choice but to assassinate Ito before he can do anything like that. And that means we might have to face the Guardians of the Imperial Tomb, which means we might have to kill Heisuke. And right now we're arguing with Hijikata-san that we're gonna save Heisuke. He doesn't want to. He's like, if he fights, kill him. And of course Kondo-san is like, no, if you can, please save Heisuke. But now we got choices. What should I do? What could I do?
これでみな自分の役割は確認したな。もし質問があるなら今のうちに言っておいてくれ。
待って。Kondo-san turned around and looked very surprised. I haven't been giving any orders. I would like to help.
手伝うと言っても、今回の仕事は池田屋や金門の変の時とは違うんだよ。君はこんな役目には関わるべきではない。
It was true. This wasn't a patrol or even a guarding mission. This was the assassination of a former comrade and an attack on men who'd split from the Shinsengumi. I still wanted to help. Still, I wanted to do what I could. It might be my last chance to see Heisuke. Please, let me go. I won't get in the way.
あのな、今回のは使いでも遊びでもねえんだ。
一時は同志だった奴らの暗殺だ。万が一のことがあれば、平助だって切ることになるかもしれねえんだぜ。
I know. It's not something to be taken lightly. I knew that the Shinsengumi had carried out these sorts of black operations before. There was no way I couldn't stayed with them as long as I had and not known, but I couldn't just let them shoulder all the responsibility. I was done looking away until the deed was done. No more. Perhaps it's presumptuous of me to say so, but I consider myself a member of the Shinsengumi. And because we're going through this, I want to help everybody.
決意は固いようだな。
His face had lost his usual warmth. It wasn't anger or cruelty that it showed now, but the gravity of the general addressing his men.
ならばどうする？この一件において君は何をしたいんだね。
I had already decided I would convince Heisuke. Num num. Drink all the water. Kyoto was a city of many streets. Some of them more quiet and isolated than others. Aburanokoji was one of these, and it was where Nagakura, Harada, and I hid with the rest of the men assigned to this task.
そろそろ来る頃だな。
We set out Ito's corpse as bait to draw the guard into a trap. My teeth bit into my lips so hard I had to stop before I drew blood. If Ito had been allowed to live, he would have been a danger to the Shinsengumi. I understood that. But this, it just seems... Is this something that could be forgiven?
辛いんなら見る必要はねえぜ。目をつぶってろ。
Yeah. Whatever I might think of what we were about to do, this was my only chance to save Heisuke. I couldn't look away. We sat there for... I wasn't sure how long, until finally we heard the sounds of the guard approaching.
あそこに倒れてるのは誰だ？まさか伊藤さん？おのれ、一体誰がこのような真似を？
6 or 7 of them rushed forward to examine Ito's corpse. Among them, of course. He hadn't noticed us yet, but the tacked and downcast boy I saw in the street was nothing like the Heisuke I'd known. Harada Nagakura picked him out at the same moment I did. Suddenly, they both closed their eyes for a moment in silent prayer.
行くぞ。ああ。
新八山佐野さん。それにお前もか。
なるほど。兄貴の死体を餌に待ち伏せか。ゲスの集まりにふさわしい卑怯な真似をしてくれやがるぜ。長倉原田、兄貴を殺したのはお前らなんだろ。
Heisuke was drowned out by the cry of Miki, who in turn was interrupted by the sudden report of a gunshot.
なんだ、近くに誰かいるのか。
If he was hesitating, then it hadn't been the Guardians who'd fired? Was it the Shinsengumi?
おいおい、一体どこのバカが撃ちやがった。
どこのバカとは釣れねえな。せっかくこの俺様が相手をしに来てやろうと思ったのによ。
Shiranui? Amagiri?
おい、どうしてお前らがここにいるんだよ。
なんでってな、仕事だよ仕事。頭の悪いお前らともっと頭の悪い御両親父の連中が罠にはまるのを見物しに来たってことさ。
He waved one of his arms casually in some sort of signal. Where did all these people come from?
よくもまあこれだけの人数を集めたもんだ。風体からすると薩摩の連中だな。
薩摩だと。
I heard Mickey dubiously mumble from a distant location.
不意打ちのような真似をしたことは詫びましょう。だが我々も一応は判明に従う責務がありましてね。
薩摩の判明かよ。お前はともかく知らぬいは長州に関係してるんじゃなかったか。ご主人様を見限って薩摩に着いたってんなら笑うとこだけどな。
それがな、今や薩摩と長州は仲良し小良しらしくてな。んなことよりてめえらの心配をしたらどうだ。
As Shiranui spoke, the men behind him began to inch forward. I reached for my sword, but Harada stopped me.
壁を背にして俺の後ろにいろ。一歩でも近づくやつは俺が片っ端から倒してやる。
From the rest of the Shinsengumi, I heard the sounds of hands tightening on hilts and swords being loosened in their scabbards. I swallowed.
どういうことか説明しろ。お前らが薩摩藩の手の者だって言うんなら、どうして俺たちまで取り囲んでやがるんだ。
ああ、お前らが伊藤派とかいう連中か。坂本の件じゃ世話になったらしいな。
Did he mean the assassination of Ryoma Sakamoto? Then, were the Satsuma and the guard allies?
んじゃま、ご苦労さん。礼は言ったから、とっとと死んでくれや。
ミキ君、危ない。おい、しっかりしろ。
Miki went to the body of one of his men, but the man seemed to be dead already. He glared at Shiranui, seething with contempt.
随分な真似をしてくれるじゃないか。
裏切るつもりか、薩摩藩。
ああ、そういうお前らは昔の仲間を裏切ったんだろうが。坂本暗殺は新選組の原田の仕業ですって噂を広めてな。
やっぱりそうか。つまらねえ噂を流してくれやがったのはてめえらだったんだな。
ま、お前らはもう用済みってこった。口封じのためにはお前ら全員殺しちまうのが一番簡単だろ。
なんだと。
Both Shinsengumi and guard were only moments from attacking when Amagiri's voice echoed across the street.
この戦力差で戦うのはおすすめしませんね。時に新選組の方々、一つ提案があるのですが。
なんだ。
そこにいる娘をこちらに預けるつもりはありませんか。そうしていただければ皆さん方のことは見逃しましょう。おい天桐、勝手なことを抜かすな。そいつとて新選組。
Amagiri stopped the Satsuma vessel just by glaring back at him with a furious gaze.
勘違いしてもらっては困ります。判明には可能な限り従うつもりですが、私にとってはそれが第一ではありません。しかし
Gunshot resounded again. The Satsuma vessel fell to the ground and he was no longer moving. Shiranui blew the smoke from his gun as it slowly rose from the barrel.
まだ何か言いたいことがあるやつはいるか。この弾をぶち込まれてまだ生きてられたら聞いてやるよ。
How could he? To Shiranui, there were no enemies or allies. He was a beast that the Satsuma had only just learned they could not control.
静かになったところで答えを聞きましょう。我々の提案を受け入れるか否か。
Not even a breath disturbed the silence of Aburo no Koji. The demons, the Satsuma, the guard, and the Shinsengumi all waited to see how I would respond. I...
だとよ、佐野。どうする？
聞くまでもねえだろ。奴らのザレ言なんて信用できるか。平助の冗談の方がまだ可愛げがあるぜ。
いいねいいね、その強がり。じゃあこの数を突破できるのかよ、お前ら。
At a motion from Shiranui, the Satsuma rushed forward, a solid wave of men and swords that tumbled over the Shinsengumi and guards alike. I tried to negotiate with the demons. 待って!
あ？ようやくこっちに来る気になったか？
Even as skilled as they were, there was no way Harada and Hakuoki could fight off all the men the Satsuma had brought. And if Amagiri and Shiranui fought as well... If I go with you, then you'll leave everyone else alone?
己の身と引き換えに仲間を助けるか。いい心がけだぜ。けどな。
What are you doing?
俺たちは後ろの奴らを全滅させてからお前を連れ帰っても問題ねえんだよ。
But you said...
ああ、確かに見逃すって言ってたな。天桐の旦那はな。
You monster! He never meant to let the Shinsengumi go. He'd only wanted to see how I would react. You...
やれやれ。知らぬいにも困ったものですね。鬼は約束を破らないというのを信条としているはずですが。
俺は今を生きる鬼なんだな。
You're disgusting.
なんだ怒ってんのか？しゃあねえな。俺もまるっきり話がわからねえってわけじゃねえ。原田、お前のことはまあまあ気に入ってるから取引してやろうじゃねえか。なんだと？その女をどんな目に遭わせてもいいから俺たちのことだけは助けてほしいってこの俺様に頭を下げるなら考えてやるよ。
Haruto's eyes moved towards me. I looked over at him now and he flashed me a brilliant smile.
さっきのはかっこよかったぜ。自分が犠牲になるから他の人を助けてくださいなんてセリフ、実際なかなか言えるもんじゃねえ。ただもう少し俺たちのことを信頼してくれてもいいんじゃねえか。
Haruto laughed fearlessly. At last, he turned to face Shiranui. The crowd of Satsuma soldiers shrank back but before his furious gaze. Glare. Bloop.
来やがれ！こいつを引き渡して生き延びるぐらいならお前らを道連れに果ててやるよ。新選組10番組組長の首、そうやすやすと取れると思うな。
Harada.
かっこつけやがって。おい平助、何をボサッと突っ取ってやがる。この状況で佐野だけにかっこつけさせる気か。
Heisuke grinned, ran a hand through his hair and stared towards us. And started towards us.
たく新八さんも佐野さんも前からそうだったよな。喧嘩の時はよ、いつもこうなんだ。俺の都合なんて全然関係なしに呼びつけやがってさ。
おいおい、そりゃお互い様だろ。俺だって何度呼び出されたかわからねえぜ。
けど今回はとびっきりすぎだっての。なんせ尊王とか砂漠とか思想心情まで全部無視して人を呼びつけちまうんだからな。
With the last word, Heisuke stood next to us, facing Amagiri and Shiranui. He flashed me a grin, and the melancholy boy I had seen only minutes ago was gone. In his place was the Heisuke I'd known.
しょうがねえから手伝ってやるよ。新八ちゃんや佐野さんはともかくこいつを見捨てるわけにはいかねえしな。
腹くくるのが遅えんだよ、このおバカ野郎。
I wasn't sure why, but when we were completely surrounded by enemies, and as we felt like we were evenly matched, the men made me feel confident that we'd come out fine as long as I stayed by their side. Nah, Heisuke. When this is all over, can't you come back to the Shinsengumi? I understand you made this decision after a lot of careful considerations, but everyone misses you.
ああ、考えとく。なんつっても佐野さんも新八さんも俺がいないとダメすぎだからな。
His response was the happiest words I've heard in a while.
こうやって3人で喧嘩すんのも久しぶりだな。
エスケ、腕はなまってねえだろうな。伊藤さんのとこじゃどうせへりくつのこね方ぐらいしか学んでなかったんだろ。
佐野さんや新八さんに心配されるほど落ちぶれてねえよ。
They laughed just the way I'd heard them do so many times before. Even in a street full of enemies, watching them made me feel almost safe. The sight of The sight of him made my heart feel so warm. Harada. I meant to say that things had worked out. He just grinned at me and gripped his spear a little tighter.
敵は鬼2匹に雑魚が大勢か。さて、犬猿キジで桃太郎を守って鬼退治としゃれ込むか。
With that, the battle began. Countless Satsuma poured into the narrow street in an attempt to choke us out with sheer numbers. Nagakura's sword flickered and leapt, utterly unconcerned with any odds. Unconcerned? Yeah, unconcerned with any odds.
ぞろぞろと数だけは揃いやがって。死にてえやつからかかってきやがれ。
Blood spurts and screams came from everywhere.
くそ、お前らごときに殺されてたまるか。
The battle was so intense that I couldn't keep up with who was battling whom.
おとなしくそこのガキを差し出して命乞いでもすりゃよかったのによ。楽に死ねると思うんじゃねえぞ。
やめとけよ知らぬい。この状況じゃむやみに撃っても味方の被害が増えるだけだぜ。
ち、狙いをつけられねえじゃねえか。役に立たねえ上に邪魔なんだよてめえら。
He kicked out furiously at a nearby Satsuma soldier who had the misfortune to stumble into Shiranui's line of fire. This is just... wow. I knew Nagakura, Harada, and Heisuke were skilled swordsmen, but I'd never seen them fight the way they did that night. Several of the Shinsengumi soldiers made a wall around me, and I watched as the captains tossed foes aside like they were made of straw. Then from across the battlefield I heard Amagiri's basso rumble. Basso rumble? Shouldn't it be bass rumble?
単身私に挑んでくるとは勇気だけは褒めておきましょう。
It has become too warm. The AC is on.
いにくこっちは人手不足でな。嫌でも俺に付き合ってもらうぜ。
1対1でも私に勝てなかったあなたがさらに不利なこの状況で何をなそうというのです。はっ！
Even swords weren't enough to stop Amagiri's fists, and Heisuke with his small frame was driven back.
Chesto!
The Satsuma pressed in, looking for an advantage. No, he's surrounded! Heisuke's plight distracted me from my own, which was a mistake I regretted almost immediately. Before I realized what was happening, two Satsuma soldiers burst through the Shinsengumi line, charging straight toward me. No one was close enough to intercept them, and I was nowhere near strong enough to fight off two men on my own. They were closer now. No time to dodge. It's a den. I heard the wet slice of two blades cutting into human flesh. It doesn't hurt? Oh my god, there's muscles now. When I looked up, the soldiers were dead. A sword pierced the chest of one, straight through the heart, and the other had taken a wakizashi through the throat. I spun towards Heisuke across the street.
なんとか間に合ったみてえだな。
He was smiling. His arms still extended from throwing his swords, and he grinned like he was happy to see me safe. Throwing his swords across the street with that damn accuracy is... holy shit. Something. Things are fine. It might rain soon. So if it starts thundering, the stream is gonna go off. Mind you. Heisuke. Why did you do that? He'd never even stopped to consider if my life was worth his own.
見上げた度胸です。
Amagidi's fist moved horribly, painfully slow. Horribly, painfully slow. That's a sentence.
だが、愚かだ。
Barbecue? Barbecue sounds good. Damn. Without his swords, Heisuke had no way to block, and his throw had left him no room to dodge. God, I want some barbecue now. Damn it. No! My ragged scream echoed across the battlefield.
平助おい平助
くそだからどけやがれ
くそなんだこいつらの強さは大脚だ引け引け
Dad, no, not yes. It's no. It's no.
なんだ撤退かよ。今回は雑魚どものせいで銃も使えねえしな。しょうがねえか。
Harada's blade became a snarling, monstrous whirlwind of death, and before it, the Satsuma and their demon allies were pushed back until they finally withdrew.
くそこの場は引くぞ今夜のことは決して忘れんお前たち新選組の奴ら全員地獄に叩き落としてやるからな
Miki and the remaining Guardian soldiers all scrambled to their feet and ran. But all of that seemed so far away for me. The street of Abaonokoji was painted with red. Everything before my eyes seemed to melt into together, coalescing into deep pools of blood. Sad noises. My hands were smeared with blood. The words Heisuke coughed out were red.
どじっちまった。
バカ喋んなやべえぞこの傷はもしかしたら内臓が
Harada, his injury. Let me see it. I ran over to Heisuke to check up on him. I was praying to myself that it'd be fine. Even if it looked bad, it couldn't be serious, right? It's not as if a strike like that was gonna be fatal to someone like Heisuke. I've repeated these things over and over in my mind. I mean...
くそおい平助こんなとこで死ぬんじゃねえよ
Was he really going to die? No, no, you can't die, Heisuke! I just couldn't get myself to believe this. But when I saw it unfold in front of me, I realized I couldn't deny what was happening. I was shivering, but I reached out to wipe the blood desperately from his cheek. His eyes were rolling back into his head, but he looked up at me, shaken and cold.
お前のこともっと守ってやりたかったのにな。かっこ悪い。
Heisuke, I wasn't ever so important that you should have given your life to protect me. So please, save your strength.
大丈夫。心配すんな。
とりあえず豚舎に運ぶぞ。ここじゃどうしようもねえ。走れるな。
Of course. We ran through the night, Nagakura and Harada bearing Heisuke's bloody and beaten body back to the Shinsengumi. Every minute felt like an hour, and with every second my heart felt that much closer to tearing in half. The assassination of Ito-san and the destruction of the Guardians of the Imperial Tomb was later known as the Aburano Koji incident. That scene... Look, we saw it last route because it was Heisuke's route, and now we get to see it again 2 in a row, and it doesn't hurt any less because it's the good boy. In this house we appreciate Heisuke. Both the Shinsengumi and the guard were surprised by the sudden appearance of Satsuma troops and by the demons who accompanied them. Both parties had fallen for the Satsuma trap, and the battlefield was thrown into confusion. During the fight, Heisuke was mortally wounded and had no choice but to drink the water of life and become a fury or die. As the Battle of Aburano Koji was taking place, the headquarters of the Shinsengumi came under attack from Chikage Kazuma. The monstrous thing my father had made was slowly devouring the Shinsengumi. How long before the water of life swallowed them whole? I think the next scene is the one with Sun on Sun, to which I'm gonna skip. Oh yes, it is. It's the one. Anyway, Heisuke is now part of the guard, and Saito had to go to an inn in Fushimi because things were tight here. Hi, Sanan. I don't want to deal with your ass right now, Sanan. You... I still have problems with your root, damn it. I want to fix them, and I'm gonna make a video fixing it without touching the original root. And I love it. Alright. Ijika's here to save our ass from Sanan, who is slowly losing his life. And I don't know what these noises are, they just happened. But anyway, we're staying here. And we'll do this scene that has been here for a couple of routes. As I was thinking that the day had passed and night had fallen. Harada? Sure, that's fine.
Yo, 悪いな。いきなり来ちまって。
いや、いてくれてよかったぜ。このまま佐野と2人だけってのはもう飽き飽きだから
な。何言ってやがる。飽き飽きしてんのがてめえだけだとでも思ってんのか？
Is there something wrong?
話し相手になってもらおうと思ってよ。何しろまともに話ができる相手がいなくて。
What do you mean? There are people everywhere.
俺たちの立場が立場だろ。部下の前で愚痴なんて聞かせるわけにはいかねえし。そもそも大使自体減っちまったし、他の幹部大使もいろいろ忙しいみてえだし
Oh,
な。
I see.
そもそも近藤さんや土方さんがいけねえんだよ。
また始まったか。
羅刹隊なんてよ、あんなもんいつまで使い続けるつもりなんだ？
So So Nagakura had something to get off his chest about the Fury Corpse. Now, I understood why they couldn't talk about it with anyone. The people who knew about it were the people they blamed, and it was a secret to everyone else.
そりゃ俺だって平介には生きてて欲しかったけどよ。だからってあんな方法で生かすなんて残酷だと思わねえか？
Well, yes, I suppose.
こんな時代に腰に大小刺してんだ。相手を切ることもありゃ、てめえが切られちまうこともある。そんぐらいは覚悟してるさ。だからってここはよ、死ぬことすら許されねえのかってな。
お前の気持ちはわかるけどよ、ちと言い過ぎじゃねえか。近藤さんや土方さんにもいろいろと考えはあるんだろうしな。
その考えっつうのはなんだ？この後に及んで大名になりてえとか城を持ちてえなんて抜かすんじゃねえだろうな。
そりゃまあ、近藤さんを本物の侍にするっつうのがあの人たちの夢だったんだろうしな。
なんだよ佐野、近藤さんたちをかばうつもりか？昔からの夢って大義名分がありゃ落ち水なんかに手を出してもいいってのかよ。
そうは言ってねえだろう。ただ近藤さんたちの立場もわかるって言ってるんだよ。
なんだよ、話にならねえな。シラフじゃやってられねえ。島原にでも出かけてくる。
Nagakura leapt up and stormed out through the door, fuming. He stormed off so briskly that the candle in my room blew out. My room fell dark, and I heard Harada sigh a little. Oh no, what should I do about Nagakura?
ほっとけほっとけ。さすがに島原で羅刹や落ち水の話をするほど考えなしでもねえだろう。
But
あいつは見ての通りいいやつだからよ。だからこそ許せねえことが多いんだろうな。
I think Harada's right. I mean, even seeing Sun on Sun earlier this afternoon, it just feels like the Shinsengumi is slowly changing. Can I ask you one thing?
なんだ？
Harada, what do you think about the Furies? His sigh made his bangs flow atop his brow.
さっき新八が言ってたこともわからねえわけじゃねえんだ。
I don't know why I love this shot of Harada. Ah, no, it.
さっき新八が言ってた
Rewind.
わからん。さっき新八が言ってたこともわからねえわけじゃねえんだ。死んじまうはずだったやつを無理やり生かして人じゃねえもんにしちまって。そりゃ確かに間違ってると思うさ。だがあの薬がなきゃ英介のやつが死んじまってたのは確かだからな。それに近藤さんや土方さんの気持ちもわからねえわけじゃねえ。もし新選組がなくなっちまったら、幕府に見限られちまったら、近藤さんや土方さんは侍じゃなくなっちまうかもしれねえからな。あの人たちにとっちゃ新選組以外の生き方なんてねえんだろう、きっと。新八はもともと武家の出身だから近藤さんたちの気持ちなんてわからねえのかもしれねえが。
So, are you saying Are you saying what it's keeping everyone together is now weakening?
どうかな。そもそも同じ夢を見てたわけじゃなく、最初から違ってたのかもしれねえぜ。同じ場所を目指してるって、それぞれが勝手に思い込んでただけでな。なんつうか、しょうがねえことだっていうのは分かってるが、楽しい時期があったからこそ辛いもんだな。
Harada was always so kind and mature and dependable. No matter to whom he was speaking, he always had their best interest in mind. And because Harada understood where Kondo-san and Hijikata-san were coming from, it might have been even harder for him.
悪いな。新八だけじゃなく、俺の愚痴まで聞かせちまって。
Oh, please, I don't mind. It makes me happy if I can help in any way, so please, don't worry about me. I can't really do anything else.
あのよ。
What is it?
そうやって自分を卑下する癖はやめた方がいいぜ。何もできねえからここにいちゃいけねえわけじゃねえだろ。そもそもお前は無理やりここに軟禁されてた立場なんだしな。
He reached his hand tenderly towards my head and patted the top of it.
少なくとも俺は今お前に話を聞いてもらって心の使いが取れたぜ。何もできなくても誰かがそばにいてくれるだけで気持ちが楽になることはあるんだ。
Really? His words were so kind. Could I trust them?
俺は平然と嘘をつけるほど器用じゃねえよ。知ってるだろうが。
Yeah, because you're a piss poor liar, Hanada. We all know it. I know, but... But what is that, Dan? What? Raging? It's on fire. Goodbye, Dan. Goodbye.
さて、あんまり長居するのもなんだし、そろそろ退散させてもらうぜ。
Oh, sure. Thank you so much.
礼を言うのは俺の方だろう。そんじゃおやすみ。
He patted my head a few times. And he left my room. My room fell silent again. If Harada was ever faced with a situation where he had to decide to drink the serum or not, I wonder what he would do. Would he drink the water of life just like Heisuke did? Well, we're gonna find out this route! The Shinsengumi, once solid, now wavered. What would happen to them? What would happen to the Fury Corps? Men were forced to watch as their friends became the undead monsters known as Furies. Was it any wonder that they found themselves conflicted, or that tempers began to rise? Several days later, the order was given to begin the imperial restoration. The emperor would be restored to power, and his court would once again rule the nation. The position of shogun would be abolished, and Kyo's military and judiciary commissioners' positions would be eliminated. All that the Shinsengumi had fought for and believed in was falling to pieces. And we have reached chapter 5. Oh, you're her. December 1867. As its order to begin imperial restoration came, the Sacho troops started occupying the city of Kyoto. At the same time, members and affiliates of the Tokugawa shogunate were being removed from the imperial palace and eventually Kyoto altogether. They, as expected, did not take this lightly. In response, the shogunate's military forces were beginning to march from Edo to Kyoto. As tensions rose from the approaching shogunate armies, the Sacho were preparing their own forces for a hostile confrontation. The situation was growing increasingly frenzied. As the shogunate scrambled to call upon their remaining allies, the Shinsengumi received an order to come to the Fushimi magistrate. Having all of their men and armaments gathered in, the Fushimi magistrate enabled the shogunate to act in the event of an emergency. So off we went. On one such day, during the commotion, oh, so we are going here, alright. Bad news was delivered to the Fushimi magistrate. There had been no witnesses and the culprit escaped unseen. Their motives could only be guessed.
ふざけんじゃねえ。誰が撃ちやがったんだ。行くぞ。手の空いてるやつは俺についてこい。
Nagakura got a crew of warriors together and they all headed towards the location where Kondo-san was shot. Kondo-san was shot in the right shoulder. The bullet pierced clean through him, shattering the bone, which required more treatment than I could have given him at the compounds. The Sacho troops who gathered in Kyoto began fortifying their base within the imperial palace. It seemed to be a warning call to all. An assertive declaration that they believed themselves to be true imperial troops. In response, shogunate forces began assembling their powers throughout the Toba Channel in Kyoto. The Fushimi magistrate as well were preparing for a war that could have come at any moment. A few days had passed since Kono-san was shot, and the mood in the magistrate's office was tense. The warriors scrambled, spending day after day to identify who may have been the culprit. I'd never seen the men so angry, although it was certainly understandable. Every man in the Shinsengumi looked up to Kondo-san, and it was hard not to like him. Still, I felt uncomfortable. Harada.
Yo. 年の瀬だってのにえらいことになっちまったな。
He was trying to act cheerful, but even I could see he was feeling down.
お前、近藤さんの怪我の様子を見に行ってたんだろう。どうだった？山崎からは右肩を怪我したらしいって聞いたが。
Well, his wound isn't life-threatening, but the scar it left is going to be pretty deep. He may contact a high fever. From what I'd heard, Hijikata-san and Yamazaki-san are currently discussing what their plan of action will be in the near future.
そっか。近藤さんも災難だよな。こんな時期に。
I know. For the leader of a group of men like the Shinsengumi, Kono-san was exceptionally kind. It hardly seemed fair that someone like that should be hurt so badly. I understood how the rest of the soldiers felt. Did they catch the shooter? Was it a Choshu?
近藤さんが撃たれたって知らせが届いてすぐ、新八が現場に駆けつけたらしいんだが、手がかり一つ見つからなかったらしい。目撃者もいなかったってことだ。厄介なことになってきたな。
For a leader to get shot just as we're about to go to war.
いや、そういうことじゃねえんだ。もちろん敵の動きも気がかりだ 今はなんつうか身内の方が危なっかしい感じなんだよな。
What is it then?
俺たちは一体何のために戦ってるんだろうな。薩長の奴らは長いこと幕府に冷や飯を食わされてた異種返しのためなんだろうが、俺たちの側はどうなんだろうってちと考えちまったな。
Well, aren't we all fighting for the shogunate?
まあ近藤さんあたりは今でも幕府を守るために戦ってるんだろうが、もともとは俺たちそういう集まりじゃなかったような気がするんだよな。
You mean the Shinsengumi? I hadn't thought of it before, but I knew almost nothing about who the captains had been before they came to Kyoto, or why they'd come.
もしかしたら前に話したことがあるかもしれねえが、俺腹を詰めたことがあるんだ。若い頃揉め事を起こしちまってな。今も気が長え方じゃねえが、若い頃の俺は今よりもっと短気だな。売り言葉に買い言葉で腹を詰めることになっちまって。だけど何の因果かこうやって生き残っちまった。その時の騒ぎで故郷にいられなくなって江戸まで流れ着いたんだ。そこで近藤さんや土方さんと会ったんだが、当時は門弟もろくにいなくて食っていくのにすら困ってる貧乏道場だったんだぜ。
Really? But they've killed so many Ronin. Okita especially was so good with a sword that it was hard to believe he was even human. I would have thought a dojo full of such powerful warriors would have flourished.
江戸には他にも有名な道場がたくさんあったし、農家のおっさんが桑振ってるみてえな剣術は流行らなかったんだよ。それなのに俺なんかを居候させて、みんなどんだけ人がいいんだろうな。だが今日に来てからは幕府から禄をもらえる身分になって、近藤さんたちにも金の面じゃ迷惑かけずに済むようになったし、なんだかんだ言って町の人を守る役目だろ。ようやく胸を張れる仕事ができるようになって嬉しかったのを覚えてるぜ。
Harada. I could see where he was coming from. For example, during the Ikeda incident, if the Shinsengumi men weren't there, then Kyoto would have been under flames and claimed many, many lives. They really look after the citizens of Kyoto. It was clear to see how much pride they had for their duties and for each other.
流れで幕臣になっちまって、幕府側について戦わなきゃならねえってことはわかるんだが、人間なかなか割り切れるもんじゃねえよな。
If I wasn't mistaken, Harada was probably talking about Heisuke, whom he'd really thought of as a brother becoming a fury, which must have hurt him. Official research performed on the water life was mandated directly from the shogunate. I think Harada was wondering how long he could have continued to support the shogunate despite feeling opposed to the actions of the shogunate.
だがまあ、こうなっちまった以上は近藤さんの仇を討たなきゃならねえんだろうな。俺は今まで守ってきた今日を戦場にしてまで偉くなりてえとは思わねえんだが。
Harada. In his mind, there were no complicated rules regarding his relationship to the shogunate and imperial court. All he wanted was to be useful and for his friends to be happy. That was why he came to Kyoto in the first place. But now he found himself about to dive headfirst into a war that would tear apart the city he worked so hard to protect. What could I possibly say to him? He seemed to guess what I was thinking and gave me a worse smile.
ダメだな。ごちゃごちゃ考えるのはどうも性に合わねえ。もう少し単純に考えてみねえか。
Chill?
ああ、今の自分が堂々と胸を張っていられるか。やましさなんて抱かずにお天道さんの下を歩けるかってな。今の新選組にそれができるやつが何人いるかはわからね
えが。How could I answer that? It's hard to say. I think it's hard to say. I mean, sure, we all had more fun before all of this started, but right now our country's in a tough spot. Trying to live in the past isn't really going to help anyone. And I know that I wasn't exactly considered a member of the Shinsengumi. I never risked my life to keep Kyo safe like they all had. It was the only coincidence that had brought me to them. It was only coincidence that had brought me to them, and I was only alive and safe because they had protected me.
え。悪い。酷な質問だったな。さっきの話は忘れてくれ。戦の話なんて女に聞かせることじゃねえよな。
What? No, don't say that. True, I might not know very much about politics and war and all that stuff, but I'm always happy to listen. Maybe I can help that way.
バカ、そういうことじゃねえよ。
He grinned and ruffled my hair with a single huge hand.
女のお前がこんなことに頭を悩ませてんのがそもそも間違いだって言ってるんだ。女が戦の場で役に立ちてえなんて思うもんじゃねえよ。もともとお前は死を覚悟して入ってきた他の大使とは違うんだしな。
Whoops. Harada's words seemed really curt, but in fact were quite kind and warm in response. It was gruff, but there was kindness in it. And the sincerity of his tone still made me happy. Wait, what? It was gruff, but there was kindness in it. And the sincerity of his tone still made me happy.
だけどよ、本来ならお前はもう自由になってもいい頃だと思うんだがな。
Free?
お前が俺たちのところに身を寄せることになったのは親父さんを探すためだろ。あの時は高堂さんの知識が必要だったが、今はもうそこまで切羽詰まった状況でもねえし、薬の研究なら三男さんが進めてる。それに正直言って今の俺たちには高堂さんを探してる余裕なんてねえからな。新選組の機密を外に漏らされるんじゃねえかって理由で今までお前を屯所に閉じ込めてきたが、お前がそんなことをするやつじゃねえってことはみんなもう分かってるだろうし。
He was saying things that I'd been thinking to myself for some time, but I wasn't quite sure how to respond. In the beginning, I had wanted desperately to leave, that was true. But now...
まあ、もし新選組を抜けたくなったら、その時は真っ先に言ってくれ。俺が土方さんに掛け合ってどうとでもしてやるからよ。
He gave me a friendly smack on the back that I hadn't been expecting. It was quite powerful. Harada! What was that?
おお、悪い。力が入りすぎたか。 本当にお前がいつまでも俺たちに付き合わなきゃならねえ理由なんてねえんだからな。
Oh, well, thank you.
さてと、そんじゃちょっくら近藤さんの様子でも見に行ってくるか。あの人のことだから大砲で撃たれようとピンピンしてると思うけどな。
To leave the Shinsengumi. I honestly hadn't even thought about it for a long time, but he was right. I wasn't one of them. I was an outsider. There wasn't any reason for me to stay, but if I left, where would I go? We still had no idea where my father was, and as Sen and Kazuma had told me, I was a demon. Could I really go back to my old life knowing that? On the other hand, Kazuma was still after me. If I stayed, he'd be back eventually. And that would mean trouble. What was I going to do? It wasn't long before Kondo-san and Okita were both sent to Osaka Castle to recover. Kondo-san's gunshot wound was healing slowly, and he needed rest and frequent treatment. Okita was sent away in hopes that a change might help him recover from his illness, which had been discovered to be severe tuberculosis. I caught a glimpse of him as he left, and his face was frighteningly pale. As I watched him leave, I felt my heart sink. It made for a bleak start to the new year. We were busy preparing for war. We couldn't do much to celebrate the coming of the new year. I was cleaning in the common room.
おや、雪村君、まだ起きていたんですか。
Oh, Sanan-san. Did you have any business here? If you're going to use this room, I'll leave.
いいえ、構いませんよ。
I know what this is. We can skip this.
み
He has waters of life.
今
Nagakura ain't gonna take it, but everybody else in the room will.
ひじ
Even Hijikata-san's gonna take it.
雪恋
Who the hell am I gonna tell Sanan-san? I know it's a secret. So I'm keeping it a secret. Today's New Year's Eve, but the Fushimi Magistrate was abuzz with panic and tension. War could erupt any day now. They seemed to put every warrior on edge as they eagerly awaited the order to march. Because of the tense uncertainty, I couldn't bring myself to sleep that night. And as Harada had told me, this was almost a self-invited sense of anxiety, because I didn't necessarily even have to be with the Shinsengumi. Compound that with the fact that the demons could come for me at any moment. My mind had no chance of resting. I got out of my bed and crept quietly to the common room to get some fresh air.
よう、まだ起きてたのか。
Oh, Harada. Are you drinking right now?
ちょっと眠れなくてな。どうだ、俺に付き合ってくれねえか。とっておきの酒だ。シンパチや平助には内緒だぞ。
Are they gonna get mad that you're drinking without them? Is that why? Sake, but how should I respond? We're pretending to drink. How about I pretend to drink with you? That way, we can still hang out. Is that okay?
ありがとうよ。それで十分だ。
Harada poured some sake into a small cup for me. That's plenty, I think. I placed the sake-filled cup on the floor, and I took the bottle from Harada. I refilled his empty cup in return for his generosity. Whoops. I poured too much and the sake reached the top.
おっと、そのくらいで大丈夫だ。
To prevent the sake spilling from the cup's sides, Harada sipped it quickly.
ありがとうよ。ああ、うまいな。
I stared at Harada, and I thought I'd ask him a question that I'd always wondered. Does sake taste good?
酒は確かにうまいが、うまいだけで飲んでるわけじゃないな。飲んでる時の空気が好きで飲んでるって感じもある。酔って溜まっている愚痴を言い合ったり、普段は聞けねえような本音が聞けたりするからな。誰かと打ち解け合うには酒を酌み交わすのが一番だな。
I see.
ああ、新八や平介ともこうやって何度も酒飲んで仲良くなったようなもんだしな。
Harada casually sipped on his sake, smiling warmly, but then his tone became serious as he asked me a question.
で、眠れないのは何かあったのか?
It seemed like Harada reached out to me earlier because he wanted to ask this. But I thought twice before telling him my answer.
こう見えても俺、口は家庭法だからよ。お前の悩みを誰かに言いふらしたりはしねえぜ。それとも、俺なんかに相談してもろくな答えが返ってこねえって思ってんのか?
Oh, it's not like that at all. It's just,
じゃあ話してみろよ。誰かに打ち明ければ楽になることだってあるだろ
う。Harada's voice was so kind. Even just a little, it made me feel like he'd lifted the burden in my heart. Is it okay for me to be here still? I left my mouth agape after I spoke.
ここにいてもいいかってのは?
Well, since the fighting will break out soon, I was wondering if it was right for me to stay here. The demons could try to kidnap me too. During the battle, wouldn't I just be in the way here? Harada curled his lips into a worse smirk and he nodded.
迷惑じゃないって答えられりゃかっこいいんだがな。薩長の奴らと戦いながら鬼と戦うのは正直言うと手に余るかもしれねえ。
Harada was always honest with me. He knew how conflicted I had felt. So he never seemed to feel the need to lie to me for my own sake.
男にとって一度守るって決めたもんを途中で放り出すことほど情けねえことはねえからな。確かにお前がここにいなけりゃあいつらも来ないかもしれねえ。ただもともとお前を無理やり軟禁してたのは俺たちの方だろう。そんな相手を守りきれなくなったから追い出すなんてみっともなくてしょうがねえ。その程度の意地も張れねえほど追い詰められてるなんて思いたくねえんだよ。俺も土方さんも他の連中もな。
I hung my head low from his words. So, is the Shinsengumi really asking you that much of you out there? My question had seemed to make him wince, and it was one I thought about for a while. Then Harada looked up at the ceiling.
どうかな。
I could sense him wavering. I'm sure he was just trying to have faith in both Hichikata-san and Kondo-san, both of whom he trusts to lead for so long. But now Heisuke has joined the Fury Corps. So many things were testing his faith, causing him to doubt the institution and people that had given him strength for so long.
まあ、何にせよ、鬼どもからお前を守ってやるってのは変わらねえからな。どんな事情があろうと、嫌がる女を無理やり連れ去ろうとするってのは褒められることじゃねえし。それは、そのことに関してだけは胸を張れると思ってるぜ。
The doubt resting in Harada's eyes only moments before seemed to leave him. Instead, there was a bright fervor. Looking at his determined expression gave me an unexpected sense of relief. Before I knew it, all of the anxiety keeping me awake had melted away, and I could sleep soundly in bed that night. January 3rd, 1868.
みんな、明けましておめでとう。まさかこんなところで年越しするとは思わなかったね。
だな。こんな場所じゃ餅も食えねえよ。薩長の奴らも少しは考えやがるってんだ。
せめて七草がゆを食べるくらいまでは何も起きないでくれればいいんだが。
ああ、まったくだな。
Harada and Inoue were still talking and warming themselves near the hibachi when Yamazaki ran in.
井上さん、原田さん、大変です。
Oh boy.
山崎か。どうした？
薩長軍と幕軍の間で銃の撃ち合いが始まりました。
なんだって、それは本当かね。
とうとう始まりやがったか。
あちこちで戦いが始まっています。おそらく薩長との全面戦争です。雪村君、斉藤さんの姿が見当たらないようだが、どちらに？
He's outside on watch. That was me actually getting freaked out. A sudden roaring explosion took the magistrate's office, followed by another and another. The constant bombardment left my ears ringing.
こっちへ来い。
Harada grabbed my arms and drew me closer to him in order to shield me. Thank you, Harada. I could feel Harada's breast softly tickle me, and it made my heart race. I know he may not have meant to do so, but still. At that moment, Saito-san returned.
斉藤さん、薩摩藩士たちの様子はどうだったのですか？
この奉行所の真横にある龍雲寺にいくつも大砲が仕掛けられているのが見えた。奴ら本気で我々と戦うつもりらしいな。
As Saito-san spoke, I could feel the air in the room tighten. It was suddenly full of faces much more grim than I had seen in a long time.
皆、出撃の準備をしろ。撃って出るぞ。
待ってました。支度はできてるぜ。薩摩の奴ら、待ってろよ。目に物を見せてやるからな。
I looked over at Harada, who was already pulling on his own uniform and headguard. The Satsuma were armed with guns, right? Are you really gonna be okay if they're using those kind of weapons?
鉄砲っつうのは少し離れちまえば当たらねえ。急所に当たらねえ限り撃たれてすぐに死ぬこともねえしな。
Oh my god. Really? His cocksureness gave me some relief, but what was this bad feeling I couldn't shake?
なんて顔してんだよ。まるで死での旅の見送りみてえじゃねえか。
But
大丈夫だって。俺たちが強いってことはお前もよくわかってるだろ 余計な心配せずにここで待ってろ。絶対に建物の外に出るんじゃねえぞ。
よし、それじゃ行くぞ。支度ができたものからついてこい。
With the shuffling and clanking of armor moving, the men followed Hijikata-san out of the building, leaving only a few men to guard the magistrate. Every time I heard the sound of cannon fire, my heart leapt into my throat, and I cringed at every scream, wondering frantically if it had come from anyone I knew. As the minutes stretched into hours, I prayed desperately for my mind, as my mind invented horrible deaths for all my friends. Then at last, as twilight began to fall on Kyoto, they returned. You're back!
Yo. Tadaima.
They were dirty and despondent now, a stark contrast to the excitement and vigor on display when they'd marched out. Everywhere I looked, I saw uniforms smudged with dirt, dust, and blood. What happened? Did anyone get hurt?
いや、怪我はしてねえから心配はいらねえよ。ただ、新八の隊は先発隊だったからな。何人も死人が出ちまって。
Oh no! Nagakura had seen his men die. Men who had drunk with him, sparred with him, and patrolled the streets of Kyoto with him. What could I possibly say to him?
気にすんな。あいつらも覚悟はしてたさ。しかし、なんだよ薩摩の奴らが使ってたあの化け物銃は。間合いに飛び込む隙なんて見つけらしねえじゃねえか。冗談じゃねえぞ。今回はたまたま運よく生き残れたが、あんなのどうすりゃいいんだ。
長倉さん。
They were all doing their best to be cheerful, but it was painfully obvious that it was just an act. It was obvious from the start that this war was far different than the likes of Ikeda or the Hamaguri Rebellion. To think that the once invincible Shinsengumi could be so easily defeated. Outside, the bombardment continued unabated. As night began to fall across the city, Hijikata-san gathered all of the captains together and laid out his plan. Once the sun had fully set, the Fury Corps would head out and attack. In the dark, guns would be harder to aim. Hopefully, that would give the Furies a chance to get close. There weren't enough Furies for a large-scale victory, but Hijikata-san hoped to blunt the enemy's spear at least a little.
お前は絶対に外に出るんじゃねえぞ。野襲を考えてんのはこっちだけじゃねえ。向こうにだって似たようなことを考えてる奴はきっといるはずだ。
I understand. Be careful.
君は中へ入っていろ。朝まで絶対に外に出ないように。
I nodded to Yamazaki and headed back inside. Never before had I felt so irritated by the fact that there was nothing I could do. No matter how I tried to calm myself down, nothing worked. I couldn't stop thinking about Harada and the others. I had just begun pacing when...
おい貴様、何者だ。ここは部外者の立ち入りは。
There was someone having an argument outside. What was that? I ran towards the entrance.
タグ、本拠地の守りがここまで手薄で大丈夫なのか？新選組の奴らのことなんざどうでもいいが、人事ながら心配になっちまうぜ。
You! Shiranui's connection to the Choshu explained his presence in Kyoto, but what was he doing at the Fushimi magistrate's office?
おっと、でかい声は出すんじゃねえぞ。って言っても、声を聞いて駆けつけてきた連中なんざ、こいつで片っ端からあの世に送ってやるけどな。
As he spoke, he drew something silver from the leather pouch at his hip. A gun. Why are you here? Did you come to kidnap me for Kazuma?
俺が冗談言うんじゃねえよ。あんな奴のためにどうして俺がそんなめんどくせえ真似をしなきゃならねえんだ？
Then why?
そいつはこっちの質問だ。お前はどうしてここにいる？自分が鬼だってことはもう分かってんだろ？人間と鬼ってのは相入れない関係だ。ここにとどまるとてめえが傷つくだけだぜ。
That's... Wait, you're one to talk. Are you working with the Choshu right now? Well, I'm working with the Shinsengumi. That's all there is to it. I opened my mouth to continue, but the cracks of a gunshot took the breath right out of me. I saw the smoke from Shiranui's gun, and I felt the bullet hiss past me to slam into the wall. His voice was suddenly low and threatening.
この俺様が長州のために働いてただ。冗談は顔だけにしやがれ。あんな高杉がいなきゃ何一つできず、俗論派の奴らにぶっ潰されて終わりだった連中なんてどうでもいいんだよ。あいつらがもっとしっかりしてりゃ高杉の奴だって。ただでさえ短い寿命をあんなに早く使い果たすこともなく、もう少し生きられたかもしれねえのによ。
After venting his frustrations, he pulled the trigger, but the bullet merely grazed my cheeks before hitting the wall behind me. I didn't know what caused him to feel this way, but I had gathered that his friend Takasugi had passed away, which, I'm sure, caused a lot of grief and doubt in the heart of Shiranui.
俺は高杉のことが気に入ってたんであって、長州の奴らのことなんざどうでもいい。国の舵取りをするのが長州だろうが薩摩だろうが徳川幕府だろうが俺には関係のねえことだ。長州の連中もそんな俺のことが鬱陶しくなってきたみてえだな。とうとうお払い箱よ。
They kicked you out, Shiranui. Huh. Well, I guess you did do your half of the deal with the person that's dead. So, no point, really.
お前の方はどうなんだ？そろそろ新選組の奴らに厄介払いされる頃合いじゃねえのか？お前がここにいると風間やら天霧やら面倒な奴らを呼び寄せるだけだもんな。
When he said trouble, it hit me like a rock. They wouldn't do that.
じゃあどうして新選組の奴らはお前を置き去りにして出払っちまってるんだ？守られてるって思ってるのはお前だけで、今頃仲間内でお前の処遇をどうするかを話し合ってるところかもしれねえぜ。
His words felt like a knife in my heart. Suddenly, I remembered what Harada had said to me earlier that day.
本来ならお前はもう自由になってもいい頃だと思うんだがな。
なんだその顔。もしかしてとっくに奴らから言われちまってたのか？出て行けって。
No! No. Harada hadn't said that because he thought I was a nuisance. At least, that was what I thought. No, he wasn't like that. I don't care what you say, I'm not leaving! I'm not a demon! I'm one of them! The words were scarcely out of my mouth when the crack of a second gunshot slammed into my eardrums. I felt a sharp pain on my cheek. My hand flew to it and came away with warm, sticky blood. I barely had time to think about it, however, before the wound began to close. In mere moments, it was gone, as if it had never been there to begin with.
新選組の奴らがそれを見たらどう思うだろうな。自分でも分かってんだろ。人の世じゃ生きていけねえ化け物だってことはよ。その化け物じみた力を見て新選組の奴らが今まで通り接してくれると思うか。
Shiranui's words made my body shake. I knew that if it were Harada looking at me, it wouldn't faze him to see me like this. But at the same time, he lived his entire life as a normal human being. I wonder what he'd think if he were to witness my powers firsthand. The thought of him seeing them made me shiver. Just then.
嫌な予感がしたから戻ってきてみりゃ、まさかこんなところでてめえに会うとはな。
Harada!
大丈夫か？どこか怪我してねえか？
No, I'm alright. I'm okay.
こりゃいいや。怪我してねえかと来たか。
何がおかしいんだ？その勘に触る笑い方はやめやがれ。
その女が怪我なんてするわけねえだろ。どんな傷でもあっという間に治っちまうよ。その娘は鬼なんだからな。お前ら人間に守ってもらわなきゃならねえほど弱かねえよ。
Every word out of his mouth hit me like a dagger. But even as Shiranui mocked him, Harada's expression didn't change.
こいつが鬼だってことはとっくに知ってる。だがそれがどうしたってんだ？鬼だろうが人間だろうが関係ねえさ。こいつの正体が何であっても今まで俺たちと一緒にいたってことに変わりはねえ。
There was no hint of doubt in his voice. He really did see me as one of them. Harada shifted his head slightly and lowered his voice to a whisper that only I could hear.
こいつは俺が何とかする。お前は先に逃げろ。
But...
いいから早くしろ。お前がいても足手まといなんだよ。
What was I going to do? Well, the answer is run away! Okay. But be careful. Shiranui is very powerful.
誰に言ってるんだよ。あいつとは何度も戦ってきたんだ。どれくらいの強さなのか見当はつくさ。
He grinned, and I felt some of the tightness in my chest fade. Everything would be all right. Harada was a great swordsman. He wouldn't lose. I turned to run when...
逃がすか!
I heard the crack of a gun firing. I felt hot blood dripping from my shoulders.
見下げ果てたやつだな、お前。高杉のやつが生きてた頃だって、俺はあいつを見捨てて逃げはしなかったぜ。
こっちへ来い。
Harada pulled my arms, moving me behind his back.
見下げ果てたのはどっちだ？この俺の目の前で女を撃つとはな。
Our boy is mad. He's pissed. He's furious.
よく見やがれ。その程度の傷なんて鬼にとっちゃかすり傷みてえなもんなんだよ。
何を言ってやがる。
The wound still hurt, but the pain was already less, and I could feel the ragged hole beginning to close. He stared, stunned, at my shoulder as the blood slowed, then stopped, and the flesh closed itself. He was wearing a peculiar expression, as if he were struggling to put to words what he'd seen. As if he had just seen a monster.
言っただろ？そいつは化け物だって。さーて、そんじゃそろそろ本気を出すとするか。
The gun in Shiranui's hand barked with shot after shot.
くそ！
Even if Harada could continue to dodge the bullets and hit Shiranui again, the wound would just heal almost immediately.
バーカ！いくらやっても無駄だって何度失敗すりゃわかるんだ？
I unsheathed my sword, trying to back him up.
邪魔すんじゃねえよ、女鬼！
The fight was beginning to take its toll on him. Harada had started to sweat, and I could see his movements slowing. As if he were doing nothing that required more exertion than a relaxed stroll. A bullet cracked against Harada's spear, and it jumped out of his hand. His face loomed over us as the barrel of his gun trained itself on Harada's head.
お前、人間にしちゃなかなかの動きだったぜ。褒美に遺言を聞いてやる。何か言いたいことはねえか？
He was breathing heavily now, but the fire in his eyes as he glared at Shiranui was undimmed. At this rate, Harada will be killed. Shiranui.
あ？なんだよ。
If I go with you, will you let Harada go?
お前、何を言ってやがる。
男の面目丸つぶれってやつだな。さっきも言った通り、こいつはお前が守らなきゃならねえほど弱いわけじゃねえよ。
Harada bit his lips and he glared at the floor, but after a moment he spoke out.
こいつがたとえ俺より強かろうが、俺の手を必要としてなかろうが、こいつを守らねえ理由にはならねえよ。男はどんな時でも女を守るもんだからな。
He just said his lady. Harada! Why did he always put his own life in danger so needlessly? Harada still had so much to offer to himself, let alone the Shinsengumi.
つまんねえ男だな、てめえ。もう少し気骨があると思ってたんだが。てめえらが長州の奴らに勝てねえのも無理ねえよ。背負ってるもんが違いすぎる。てめえと遊ぶのもそろそろ飽きてきたし、あの世に送ってやるぜ。あばよ。
I could see his finger tightening on the trigger. This was it. We were going to die.
これは驚きました。
Oh, that's unexpected.
戦の最中に我々新選組の本拠地へ乗り込んでくる愚か者がいたとはね。
That voice was familiar.
鬼の犬間になんとやらですか。
What is this turn of event? Okay.
いや、そもそも侵入してきた君の方が鬼か。
佐野さん、大丈夫か？
You too. Okay. No, we're not. Are we going through this again? I can't handle this situation again. No. Please don't do it again. I swear, game. I swear, if we go to Edo Blossom and the thing happens again, I'm gonna.
無粋な連中だ。相手にするのも面倒だし、今日のところは引いてやるよ。あらだ、そいつが化け物だってことはさっきのを見てよくわかったろ。ただでさえ短い命なんだ。もう少し有意義に使うもんだぜ。
なんだと？
てめえもだ、女鬼。こいつらのことを憎からず思ってるんなら、さっさとここを出てやれよ。こいつらだって化け物女を守るために戦い続けてきたわけじゃねえだろ。男の命っつうのは大義のために使わせてやるもんだぜ。
You. But it was gone, like a puff of smoke. Haruda pounded a fist into the nearest wall.
なんなんだよ、あいつは。前に戦った時と全然違うじゃないか。あの時は手を抜いてやがったってことか。バカにしやがって。
しょうがねえよ。相手は鬼なんだから。人間の佐野さんじゃ相手にならねえって。
原田君、君に渡しておいた落ち水を飲めば、たとえ相手が鬼といえど勝機はあったはずですが、なぜ飲まなかったのです？
あれを飲むかどうかは俺たちそれぞれに任されてるんだろう。たとえ勝つためとはいえ、飲む気にはなれなかったから飲まなかった。ただそれだけのことだ。
つまり我々のような化け物にはなりたくないと、そういうことですか？
そうは言ってねえよ。俺の発言を勝手にねじ曲げねえでくれるか。
Sun-and-Sun's implication was a little harsh.
雪村君、肩に血がついているようですが、これは
？Oh, I'm fine. I'm not injured.
着物に銃弾の跡が残っていますね。もしや銃で撃たれたのですか？
Well,
なるほど。これが鬼の力ですか。やはり私の目に狂いはなかった。君の回復力はもしかすると我々羅刹を上回るかもしれませんね。
Sun-and-Sun? I sensed an abnormal amount of intensity in his voice, and I called his name out of concern.
おそらく今後鬼たちと戦う上で我々羅刹隊が重要な役割を担うことになるはずです。しかし羅刹には多くの欠点がある。鬼である君の存在がその欠点を補う手がかりとなるかもしれません。
おい三男さん、今後こいつの身柄をどうするかを決めるのはあんたじゃねえだろ。
そうだよ、こいつ嫌がってるじゃねえか。
No experimenting here. No experimenting ever.
俺みてえな状況ならともかく、必要ねえやつまで羅刹隊に引っ張り込む必要はねえって。
土方君なら私が説得しますよ。彼は頭がいい。説明すればきっと理解してくれるはずです。
そういうことを言ってるんじゃねえよ。もともと俺たちに縁もゆかりもなかったこいつを羅刹隊の事情に巻き込むのはおかしいって言ってるんだ。
待って！ Look, I'm going to have to think about it a little. Okay? I'll think about what you've said, son and son. I'll give you an answer later.
いい返事を期待していますよ。
お前何言ってるんだ。もともと新選組の人間じゃねえお前がどうしてそんな研究に協力しなきゃならねえんだよ。
I know he was only trying to make me feel better, but hearing him say that I was not truly a member of the Shinsengumi hurt a great deal. Ouch! Harara! In the end, the Fushimi Magistrate's office was engulfed in flames, and the Shinsengumi was forced to leave Kyoto. Oh, really? We're ending it there. As chaos spread across the country, the various domains grew more opportunistic. Ah, fuck it. Some, such as the Kyoto, abandoned the shogunate entirely. What frightened the loyalist domains the most was that the Satsuma and their allies had begun to march under the gold brocade flag. The gold brocade flag was proof that the army behind it was carrying all of the will of the imperial army. Many domains began to worry that they would be considered rebellious or seditious if they opposed the imperial army. The Shinsengumi retreated from Kyoto and made for Osaka Castle. Yeah. Shit. No more water. Anyway, the night we got into Osaka Castle, I was having the worst bout of insomnia. From what I had heard, the supreme commander of the shogunate, Lord Yoshinobu, had returned to Edo by ship almost as soon as the war had begun. As if matters couldn't get worse, we had lost a kind and gentle soul in Inoue, who tragically died in the war. Yamazaki-san had also suffered from severe wounds on the battlefield, and his fever was rising quickly. At this point, what did the future hold for us? Hijikata-san had declared that the Shinsengumi were to return to Edo, biding their time until it was their time to strike back against the Sacho. Huh? I heard the tapping of footsteps approaching the outside of my door, which startled me awake. Who could be up at this hour of night? I was scared by the thought of a silent intruder seeing me, so I slid my door open silently and peered outside. Harada? I wonder where he could possibly be going at such a late hour. I wasn't sure if it was alright for me to snoop, but at this point curiosity was getting the better of me, so I sneaked out and followed him. Harada carefully peeked over his shoulder before slinking out of the building and grabbing something from his kimono pocket. Please no. It was, please no! The water of life. Why in the world would he be holding that? No. Was he planning on... Harada stared contemplatively at the bottle, ensnared by his thoughts, and eventually you threw it against the ground, shattering it. Oh my boy, oh, you had me there, Jesus Christ. Also, yes, it should be ground, not floor. なんで? Sana-san had just told him as long as he had that serum, he can gain powers that can fight against the demons.
そこにいるんだろ。そろそろ出てきてもいいぜ。
Oh no. How did I know I was there the whole time? I gulped awkwardly as I showed myself to him. Sorry for following you.
いや、気にすんな。別に見られて困るような真似をしたわけじゃねえしな。まあ、今の三男さんあたりに見られてたら何を言われるかわからねえが。
He'd had a lot more than just some words, I feel.
お前はあの人に告げ口なんてしねえだろ。
Well, of course not. I wouldn't say anything. But why did you do that? If faced with dire circumstances, he would be able to save his own life with that serum. I don't necessarily enjoy the idea of entertaining such a possibility, but still, considering the thought of Inoue losing his life and what could still come of Yamazaki, the grim realities of the war were beginning to unsettle me, causing a dark cloud over my heart.
うまくは言えねえんだが。
I need to know this answer because I'm curious.
一言で言うなら、性に合わねえってとこかな。
So, you mean you wouldn't want to become a monster just to survive? Harada suddenly snapped a turn and faced me, glaring at me with his dark amber eyes. It was as if he were staring straight through my heart. I couldn't help but turn away from his gaze. Gomen. I don't know what's gotten over me. I'll return to my room now. The awkward tension from the lack of responses was almost unbearable, so I tried to leave when...
待て。
Harada tightly grabbed my shoulders, stopping me to look into his eyes.
部屋まで送ってくぜ。途中で誰かに見つかると面倒なことになるだろうしな。
Thanks for walking me back. I'll see you tomorrow. I rushed to say goodbye, and I tried to end the conversation, but then...
あのよ。
ん？
俺はお前を化け物だなんて思っちゃいねえからな。
I gulped. It felt like his words hit me right where it hurt.
ずっと気にしてたんだろう。知らぬいのやつに言われたこと。
How did you... I hadn't even said anything about it to Harada. How did he know?
そりゃわかるに決まってんだろうが。さっきの辛そうな顔を見りゃな。普通の女が化け物なんて呼ばれて平気でいられるはずねえよ。
I really appreciated his consultations, but I'm not just any girl. Like you saw the other day, my body can heal itself almost immediately.
傷がすぐに治るだけの普通の女だろ。
But the minute my body starts doing these things, I can't just pretend like I'm some ordinary girl. Just like you saw that day, I'm not worthy of your protection. I don't deserve for you to risk your life for mine. So...
あったくめんどくせえな。
Harada wore a sarcastic expression as he clicked his tongue and tightly grabbed a hold of my wrists. Harada? Then Harada pulled me close to him. In the next moment, I was right beside Harada's chest. What was going on? Why would Harada be doing this? In his arms, I froze, so nervous I found it difficult to bring myself to say anything. Harada. My voice quivered as his name left my mouth. His voice in turn was calm and warming.
聞こえるか?
Hear what?
俺の心臓の音だよ。お前と同じだろ。
I gasped when I realized... I get it now. Harada had wanted to say this to me all along. I felt silly for lashing out about it earlier, and I focused on the beat of his heart against mine. Against me. Whoops. Through his thick chest, I could hear his heart beating steadily, gently, and it made me feel safe.
誰が何と言おうと何も違わねえよ。鬼だろうが人だろうが、照れりゃこうして心臓は早金を打つ。楽しけりゃ笑う、悲しけりゃ泣く。惚れた相手がいれば守りたくなる。
What?
なんでもねえよ。お前は気にすんな。
Oh, that was smooth, damn it. Harada reached his gruff hand towards my hair, stroking the strands tenderly. I found myself leaning on Harada's chest completely. The kindness of his gesture slowly melted all of the worries I had spent so much time building up in my heart. I wondered if the sound of someone's heartbeat was enough to calm the beat of another. No. Maybe it's because Harada knew how to make me feel this way. After a brief moment, Harada reluctantly pulled himself away from me.
さて、そんじゃ俺はそろそろ部屋に戻ることにするか。悪いな、ぶしつけな真似をしちまって。俺、あんまり口がうまい方じゃねえからよ。
Don't worry about it. I had no idea he'd do such a thing out of the blue. I was blushing so hard that I could barely even look Harada in the eye. Who could tell if Harada knew exactly what was going through my mind?
そんじゃおやすみ。あんまりあれこれ考えすぎるんじゃねえぞ。
And with that, he left my room. After that, I had trouble sleeping as I continuously replayed the moment in my head. I couldn't get a sniff of sleep at all that night. But even then, Shiranui's hurtful words and my ensuing anxieties had almost disappeared from memory. Final chapter time. Boat time! On January 9th, I'd gotten aboard a ship heading to Edo, along with the Shinsengumi captains. I don't know how many years it had been since I'd last stepped foot in Edo. I stood on the deck, gazing into the horizon that stretched as far as the eye could see. Huh? A little distance from me, I saw Harada staring into the sky. What could he be looking at? My curiosity pulled at me, so I walked up to him. Hey, Harada, what are you doing?
鳥だよ、鳥。
I knew it was a
お前も見
bird.
てみたらどうだ
I knew it was a tori. Why are you looking at a tori? Harada then started laying down, watching the sky above him in a more comfortable position. But I couldn't really get myself to lie beside him, so I just sat next to him. Together, we stared into the movements above. Unlike down here, the sky was unchanged by war, and it stretched above us in its usual majesty. On the ship's bow, a group of seagulls were perched in search of food, safety, or who knows.
たく、幕府が大金はたいて海外から買い入れた黒船だっつうのに。こいつらにゃ、そんな事情は何の関わりもねえんだな。
Seems to be the case. Considering all that's been happening over the past few days, I'd realized that I didn't even take the time to stop and soak up the sky. Harada watched the birds chirping carefully, yeah. And his face was bright as he muttered aloud.
たまに思っちまうんだ。俺はあいにくと戦うことしか知らねえ人間だが、煩わしいことは全部忘れて、あの鳥みてえに海の向こうまで飛んでいけたらってな。
Does that mean even he doesn't want to fight in the war? That he's nervous about what's to come?
気にすんな。ただの思いつきだ。今はまず江戸に帰らねえとな。俺たちが昔過ごしてた場所、原点に帰ってもう一度考えようぜ。
In between a conversation, the birds would screech loudly and flap against the strong ocean breeze. As I looked up at them, my eyes thinned. Okay. I don't know what waited for us in Edo, but I suppose just for this moment, we can rest our wings like those seagulls. As I watched the beautiful blue sky above, I'd let the thoughts tide calmly in my head. We've reached the credits. God, okay. How does one feel? I like Harada. I know where I put Harada on the list, of the top 12 list. It's interesting he doesn't take the water of life, and his reasons behind it. It's not him. It's not, power's not a thing he seeks. He's literally the only one out of the 12, okay, 11, we're not counting Kazuma, 11 that doesn't take it. Harada has some damn good willpower. And he's also smooth as fuck. But I think Harada's placement is going to be determined by the second part of the story in Edo Blossoms. And the light is flickering, so if the stream shuts down, I'm sorry. Yeah, part 2 is going to decide where Harada fits. And after Harada, we're doing Chizuru's roots, and then we're doing Yamazaki, because I already know Yamazaki's. But we're doing it anyway, because people don't know it. But finishing part 2 will be the end of the top 12 list. And I can put my thoughts together finally. I might actually use it as rude. But, that's how I feel. We're not done yet. Hopefully the power lasts until I'm done. Please, 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 I beg you. Gaia, I beg you. Let me get through this. Then you can shut my power off. January 1868. The Battle of Toba-Fushimi ended with the Sacho victorious. As the shogunate troops retreated, the Shinsengumi headed towards Edo. 4 years ago, I came to Kyoto all by myself in search for my father and met the Shinsengumi. I'm going to leave the city of Kyoto where I made fond memories with the Shinsengumi. He sacrificed his body in order to protect me, and I have chosen to walk alongside him. We are going to head to Edo, without knowing what fate awaits us. Not done just yet. We still got a little bit of itty bitty DLC we gotta do that I've never seen before. I think I haven't seen before anyway. Oh! Oh, what is this? I've never seen this before. Wait, did I get this because I finished? Why did I get this? Why did I genuinely get this? Is it because I finished everything? I can't read what that says. Also, Saito always has birds on him. Anyway. Okay, I get it. Okay, I get it. Gaia, okay, I'll go do the DLC right now. Just let me... Let me do the DLC. Hanada, let's go. 1866, so we are in a temple. Yes. I think. One evening, I had been walking back to the compounds with Harada after visiting Shimabara. Harada? Was it alright for the two of us to leave before the others?
あの様子だと、新八や平介は明日の朝まで飲んでそうだしな。そんなのにお前を付き合わせるわけにはいかねえだろ。
But I know that Harada likes drinking too. He probably would have wanted to stay behind and enjoy his night with his friends.
いいから気にすんなって。たまにゃこういう日もいいさ。
Thank you. As our conversation ended, we realized the only sounds we could hear were our footsteps in the vacant streets, which had emptied after the bustle.
どうした?
Well, you were talking for a while with one of those geisha back at the table, so what were you guys talking about?
ああ、まあ大した話じゃねえんだが。
Is it something you don't want to talk about? Harada usually never felt the need to skirt around subjects with me, which further piqued my curiosity.
いや、そういうわけじゃねえよ。あの姉ちゃん、物好きらしくてな。どんな女が好みなのかってしつこく聞かれてたんだ。
I heard thunder. Let's hurry this up. Oh, your preferences in women, huh? I guess that was a relatively typical question to ask during a session where everyone is drinking. So, what did you tell her, Harada? I had no real expectation of what he could give as an answer, but I felt a mixture of curiosity and timidly bubbling in me.
好みなんて言われても、着物の柄やら 刀のこしらえについてあれこれ言うのとはわけが違うからな。最初は好みじゃねえと思ってた女に惚れちまうこともあるし、逆もあるしよ。その辺はあんまり言いたくねえんだが、強いて言うなら。
What is it?
どんな時でも嘘がなくて守ってやりたくなるような女かな。
So, you want someone who's honest?
はあ、俺はこの通り察しがいい方じゃねえからよ。言葉ではっきり言ってもらわねえとわからねえとこがあるから、素直な女がいいかと思ってな。
I see. It made sense. Harada had no qualms with being blunt and letting someone know it. A woman who shared in those values would probably be a great for him.
お前の方こそどうなんだよ。お前だって男の好みぐらいあるんだろ。土方さんみてえな色男か、それとも平助みてえに気さくで話しやすいやつか。
Well, now he was putting me on the spot, and I had no idea how to answer.
他のやつには秘密にしておいてやるから、俺にだけこっそり言ってみろよ。
I wasn't sure if I could trust Harada with this kind of information about myself, but I think it'd be someone who's strong, but can be sensitive enough to understand other people.
金持ちだとか顔のいい男なんて答えが返ってきたらどうしようかと思ったが、お前がそんなこと言うはずねえか。
おい、Harada、なんで。
お前、割と男を見る目があるみてえだな。
You think so? Our conversation stopped again, and the sound of our footsteps echoed into the empty alleys as we passed them quietly. Then Harada muttered to himself peculiarly.
男気があって人の痛みがわかるやつか。それって俺にも当てはまるよな。
I had absolutely no ulterior motives as I told him all of that, but now that he brought it up, Harada did seem to match the description of someone I could consider giving my heart to. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it like that.
なんだ、俺のことを言ったわけじゃねえのか。残念だな、そりゃ。もしそうなら嬉しかったんだな。
What? My mind blanked as he seemed disappointed by my attempt to play off my embarrassment. He would have been happy. Was he just being nice, or was he messing around with me? Or did he truly mean it?
どうした？早く豚舎に戻るぞ。この辺りは特に物騒だからな。
Harada and I walked shoulder to shoulder back to the compounds, moving with haste, but I couldn't get myself to ask what he had meant by his words, and leaving me to think as we walked. Alright, we're done with the DLC bit. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. EST with Hakuoki Edo Blossoms, where we continue Harada's route. Please drink water. Have a good night or day. Don't die because you didn't drink water. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.